Hey y'all, this is Candice with Slusher Consulting, home care consulting that is. I want to talk about a conversation I've been having pretty frequently lately, which is about clients stealing caregivers. I've had several agency call and say, I've discovered that my client quit and then my caregiver wasn't suddenly looking for work again out of nowhere. And when I investigated further, I found that the caregiver is working privately for the client. Now, this is an age-old story. It's been happening for a long time. The first thing I want to say is there's always going to be people who are not honest. And the first and last thing I want to say is don't take it personally. Okay. It's not about you. It's almost always just about somebody's bank account. Now, there are times when a caregiver has manipulated the situation and they are the ones who really started that. Um, it's hard to identify when that happens, and hopefully your clients will resist that. They're working with an agency for a reason. There's always options to work with private caregivers, but as you know, when a caregiver and a client spend a whole lot of time together, they can become close and they feel almost family-like in some instances, and there's only so much you can do, right? You would like to try at the beginning to be clear and make sure that you're drawing boundaries. And so I want to encourage you when you're signing up a client, when you're hiring caregivers, that from the beginning, from the first conversation to the last, you're always very clear that the caregiver works for the agency works for the client. So hopefully when you're doing your admission with your client, you're talking about things like please don't tip or give any cash directly. We ask that you don't exchange gifts, or that if you want to for a holiday, you include us in that information so we just know and everything is above board, keeps everybody honest, kind of thing. Um, but then the same thing with the caregivers is you're going to ask at the beginning and hopefully try to enforce as much as possible that you don't give the client your direct phone number. All messages should go through the office. Or if the family wants you to give a report while you're with the client, then you use the client's phone to give that report and keep your own information private so that you're continually creating that boundary so that you are between the client and the caregiver, hopefully. But sometimes those things don't work, no matter how much effort you've put forth to do that. And so typically the next step is there's some sort of finder's fee built in your agreement. And if you don't have anything built into your agreement that asks your clients not to engage or hire your caregivers privately, you should. Mine says we ask that you do not hire a caregiver or engage with them in any business privately outside of the company for 1 year after our agreement is done. So if a client terminates you and hires a caregiver immediately, that's breaking that agreement, which they've signed. Um, but if they wait a year and come back and need somebody, I guess that's a different story, right? But it's meant to protect you. It's sort of it's a non-compete for your employees, and it's um, that clause for your clients. So finder's fees can be high and low. There's different philosophies on that. Some agencies automatically put a $8,000 to $10,000 or more finder's fee in their agreement to really try to say we are serious about this, and you do not hire our caregivers, and it's a big deal, right? Um, and sometimes that works for them, and it's enough to sort of use scare tactic to keep people from crossing those boundaries. They don't want to be liable for an extra $15,000. Although if they're on 24/7 or 12 hours a day, you're probably already getting paid that per month. And so understand that the money may not always matter to them. And they may be gambling that, you're not really going to do anything about it, or it might be worth it to them to pay it. On the other side of that, and my agreements have always been on the lower side. My finder's fee right now is about 3,000, maybe as high as five. But what I've seen from that, and this is just a philosophy, so you do with it what you will, but what I've seen from that is that sometimes families will say they have a 24/7 case and they really like three or four of the caregivers that have worked for them for maybe a while, maybe several months. But they're looking down the road at, mom may outlive her funds. Dad set her up with all of these funds and everything looks good for now, but she's got dementia, but physically she's very healthy, and this could go for 10 or 12 years. And, as a family, we've discussed she really doesn't want to have to move into a facility if she can stay at home. But when they start looking at how much they're spending per month and how long this is going to last, then they may have to make a decision to either move mom into a facility earlier than they wanted, or they've got to do something to cut costs. That happens pretty frequently. And most of the time, that is the motivation for why somebody hires for caregivers privately, because they can't afford to outlive their funds. Okay. They're not going to spend all their money down and end up in a Medicaid facility just because you told them not to hire the caregivers privately, right? That's not reality for them. Now, there are some people who have money, and maybe they got that money on the backs of workers, and they don't really care about your rules or what you say, and they're just going to do whatever they want anyway. Hopefully those are the exception, because I like to assume that humanity is good. But most of the time, the motivation just comes down to what we can afford and looking down the road long term. Okay. So for me, what has worked is a lower finder's fee, so that if a family determines this is the situation we're in, and I saw in the agreement that there's a finder's fee of $3,000. Well, I have 4 caregivers, but I'd really like to hire 3 of them privately. And so I would like to go ahead and pay you that finder's fee for these 3 caregivers, and we're going to go do our own thing. Now, ideally, what you want is for that finder's fee to be enough for the agency to get back like a month's worth of whatever profit you would make off of that client. Okay. So if a client is paying, so we'll just average $20,000 a month for a 24/7 client private pay. Then if they hire 3 caregivers, that's $9,000 that you get to bill for immediately. You don't have to pay payroll out of that. That all goes onto your profit side. And then you're going to redirect that time and energy and some of that money to rehire hopefully 3 good caregivers and move on and get another client, right? So the finder's fee is meant to buy you the time to spend the effort to gain a new client, to get some new caregivers, and just move forward. And the good thing about that is, and what I would generally say when the finder's fee comes up is, and if you decide you want to hire somebody privately, we have this finder's fee here, and if you pay this, it will keep the caregiver in good standing, so that they can come back and work for the agency when you no longer need them. And so for those clients who have best intentions and really care about their employees or care about their caregivers and they want to keep them, then they will go ahead and pay that anyway to keep that caregiver in good standing, so that they don't lose a job with a reputable company such as yours. So I've seen that work out many, many times. Even had a situation where a gentleman had certain needs, but he just didn't meet that requirement for 3 activities of daily living that his long-term care insurance needed. And it was going on for quite a while, and he just wasn't really progressing because the caregiver was giving really good care. And so the family hired the caregiver privately, paid the finder's fee, did private pay for a while. And once his ADLs increased so that long-term care insurance would pick up, they came back and billed everything through the agency again. So again, that can go kind of both ways. Now, if you are doing automatic payments, which is what I recommend, so that you're not having to chase down checks and ask people, wait for people to pay their invoices. I do an automatic draft of a, credit or debit or bank draft every couple of weeks when I run invoicing. If you're doing that and you can prove like that somebody has hired your caregiver, so you are aware of it, you've seen it yourself, somebody confirmed that they're working for somebody, or maybe the 4th caregiver gets upset that they only hired them and not me, and so she tells everybody. However it is that you can confirm that they have hired that person, and you have automatic, you can just go ahead and run that invoice because they signed that on your agreement, right? They signed when they signed up with you in the consents that they agree that there's a finder's fee and if they hire anyone. And if you do that, most of the time they've been caught. They're not going to come back and try to fight that charge. Because you do have this document that they signed that they would agree to it. So you can certainly go ahead and bill for that finder's fee and then just move on. Again, trying not to take it personally. Yes, it is infuriating. Okay. One of the terms I sometimes use is I just say, that's their karma. You know what? They did us dirty, and they didn't tell us about it, or they lied about it when they could have been honest and we could have just talked about it. But I'm going to go ahead and bill this and just move on and forget about it, because it's not about you. It's almost never because they hate you or because they're really trying to take advantage of you. It's almost always out of self-preservation. So just try not to let it ruin your whole week. Your day, maybe, I get that, but not your whole week. Okay. Just don't take it personally. The last thing is, I have had some agencies who talk about taking legal action. And some people in their non-compete agreement, non-solicitation non-compete agreement with the employee, when they sign them up, even has a fee that they would charge the employee. But let's be realistic. You're not going to get any money out of those employees. It's not going to happen. And if you tried small claims court or even a real court situation, most likely you are going to waste money on legal fees and by taking legal action and still not get any money from that caregiver. It's just not going to happen. So if you decide to do something that serious, probably have an attorney look over your paperwork and determine if it's even going to hold up in court, because I've had many situations where people say, and I tried legal action and got nothing out of it, and it was a waste of time and money. So don't take it personally. Understand that it does happen. Protect yourself. Have those conversations at the time that you're admitting. Don't just skim over the finder's fee. Talk about it when you admit the client. Talk about it with the family, the decision makers, so that they understand this is what this is here for, and that it keeps the caregiver as well as the client in good standing. You can always come back. We did a great job hiring people to begin with, so let's just keep everything above board. And then if somebody just gets away with it, if you don't do automatic billing and you send an invoice and they never pay it, again, sometimes you just have to let that go. It's just part of the negatives of doing business in home care. So I hope that that doesn't ever happen to you, but I bet it will sometime, or that it has already. So hopefully these little tips are helpful to you. And if you need any more advice on that, reach out. Thanks.